Grab your cup. I recently gave a talk at a conference for women. It was a conference on leadership and a conference on health. So leadership and health for women. And I want to share a story, a fairy tale that I used to conclude my talk because I think it has a very powerful message and it was very pertinent to what my talk was. So I can't give you the whole 30 minutes of the talk, but I can give you this fairy tale. And I invite you to look and see how it might relate to your life. The fairy tale, well, actually, before I give you that, let me tell you the topic of my talk, which was creating wholeness and peace. So wholeness is defined as having all of its parts in its entirety, integrous, missing nothing. And peace, I'm going to invite you to consider, is what we experience when we feel whole. We lose our wholeness when we give away parts of ourselves, when we give our authority to other people about our life, when we decide other people know better or other people are more important or what they want overrides what I want. And so let me go ahead and do what they say. Let me say yes to things I want to say no to. Every time we do that, we give away a piece of ourselves. So we are breaking up our wholeness, so to speak. Okay? So this fairy tale that I used to conclude my talk has components of that. And there's certain parts, I think, of all fairy tales, or certainly most of the ones that I know, that are interesting to keep in mind. These fairy tales are hundreds of years old. Grimm's fairy tales, I think, are almost 300 years old now. And other cultures have them as well. But some of the main parts seem to be consistent to me in all of these different stories. Number one, they're most often about a young girl. Hansel and Gretel has a sister and her brother, but most often they are a young girl. Snow White, Cinderella, Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty. They're a young girl who goes through some peril, and typically that peril is because of the choices and the actions of other people. So other people are doing things and her life is affected, and sometimes pretty direly. The girl with no hands has some gruesome details. She has no hands, and I'll tell you why in a second. I'll tell you what happens. But there's some dire circumstances and often gruesome details. And another component that is pretty common throughout most fairy tales is she needs a man to come save her. So that's why girls learn that we need to go find our prince who's going to save us, right? We're a damsel in distress and we need our handsome prince, because the fairy tales tell us that. So let me share with you this story that I did as the conclusion of my talk. I can't give you the whole 30 minutes, but I can give you this fairy tale, which I shared at the end, okay? So this young girl lives with her father. There is no mother, which is also a common thread in fairy tales. For some reason, the mothers are always gone, or often gone. But she's maybe young, early teens, and her father's a farmer. And a criminal comes and makes a deal with the father. He says, you either give me your farm or you cut off your daughter's hands. I don't know why, but that's the deal. And the father doesn't want to give up the farm because then they have no way to make a living. So he has his daughter's hands cut off. So here she is, a young teen with no hands, as the result of a deal made by her father and another guy, ostensibly to save the family farm so that they can live, but at great sacrifice to her, obviously. As she grows into be an older teenager, the prince of the land sees her and falls in love with her because of her beauty. She has such beauty, he's immediately in love with her. And so he wants to marry her. So again, another deal by her father to marry her off to this prince who she doesn't know and doesn't love, but it's going to improve her state in life. And in fact, the king, the prince's father, has a pair of silver hands crafted for her so that she can have at least the look of hands and maybe keep gloves on them, but it looks much better than it did before. So she gets that out of the deal. So she's figuring, this is my life. This is what I have to do. I don't have hands, but at least I have these silver hands. At least I have somebody who loves me and a place to live. Except that the queen, the prince's mother, is very jealous of her. She's jealous of her beauty. She's jealous of how much her son loves her. She's jealous of the fact that her husband made these beautiful silver hands for her. And she plots against her, and the girl knows it. At some point, she has a baby, and now she's really worried because the queen is even more jealous of now this baby that her son is so besotted with. It's his child, right? So she's even more jealous. And the girl realizes that her life is going to be in danger if she stays there because the queen is that bitter to her. So she grabs her baby and she runs away from the castle. And as she's out in the forest, she comes upon a river and she accidentally drops the baby in the water. And she's there at the side of the river sobbing, thinking about all of the things that have happened to her in her life. Think about your life, all of the things, all of the times people you counted on betrayed you, all of the things that happened that were outside of your choosing, and yet they impacted you, all of the trauma, perhaps. Remember, trauma is how we're left after something happens to us, what the impact on us. So she's sitting there at the edge of the river thinking of her whole life and how it's ended, and now I'm going to lose my baby. And an angel comes to her and says, jump in and save your baby. Jump in. And she says, I can't. I don't have hands. These aren't real hands. I can't save my baby. And the angel says, jump in. You can do it. So she jumps into the river and she scoops up the baby and she comes out of the water. And when she comes out of the water, her hands are restored. There's no silver hands there. She has her own hands, seamless with her arms. She's restored to wholeness. And the impact of that story, or what I want you to see, is that it was courage. Courage was the portal that she needed to go through. When she was stuck on the side of the river, she was stuck in the story of her life. She was stuck in all the reasons why everything went wrong, all of the things that had happened to her. She was stuck in how broken she was, that she didn't even have hands because of other people's choices and actions. And when the angel encouraged her and she found the courage, not for herself, but for her child, she stepped into courage and she dove in. She got her whole self back. She was returned to her wholeness. And now she could make her way with herself and her child on her own terms and not need anybody else to make decisions for her, to tell her what she had to do. So I just wanted to share that story with you because when we look at our life as a story of victimhood and as the result of all the bad things that happened, we get stuck in being incomplete. We get stuck having lost our wholeness and giving the power of ourselves away to others. And when we can pull that power back in, and it takes courage, and it takes a lot of other things. It's not as quick as a fairy tale, unfortunately. It takes a lot of other things of changing how we see ourselves and rewiring and releasing the impact of having our hands cut off, so to speak, metaphorically, whatever were your circumstances. We have to release the impact of that from our body, and then we get our wholeness and our self returned. And that's when we get peace. So that was what my talk was about, because that's the work that I do. It's the work I've had to do in my own life. I had all of my own versions of what shouldn't have happened. And I had to do the work if I wanted to get my life back. And now I do that with my clients. So if you'd like more information about that, put talk in the comments. I would love to talk to you more and talk about your life and not just a fairy tale. Have a good day.